Hi everyone, my name is Radhika Desai and I'm the convener of the International Manifesto Group. I would like to briefly introduce today's presentation. It's going to be given by Professor Oleg Barabanov, who is a professor at the Department of Integration Studies and a deputy director of the European Studies Institute at the Moscow University of International Relations, the famous MGIMO or GIMO University. He's also a program director at the Valdai Discussion Club. Now, because we started, unfortunately, recording a tiny bit later than we should have, I'm just also going to provide the first little bit, the gist, I should say, of the first little bit of Professor Barabanov's presentation. So let me get the slide going here. Here we go. So Professor Barabanov was going to speak on the topic, as you see here, of COVID-19 in Russia, political aspects and statistics. And he began by obviously claiming that these slides reflect only his personal and subjective point of view and do not represent any official body that he belongs to. So this is the slide that we missed recording. So he basically drew attention to the deeper politics involved in the handling of COVID in Russia. And he drew attention to the fact that at his last inauguration, President Putin issued his May decrees, which had to do with, in both inaugurations, they had to do with the task of national development. And one of them from the beginning had been to try to diminish mortality from heart diseases. And what happened in the course of these decrees kind of shows us the kind of politics and manipulation that is involved in the present COVID context. So this is roughly the date at which Professor Barabanov thinks that you can presume that there was the beginning of substantial manipulation of medical statistics in the various regions of Russia, where the diagnosis of the causes of the death of patients who died was often changed from heart disease to anything else, basically. And the reason for that was to show that our region, that particular region was somehow not the worst, that it was actually doing very well vis-a-vis the goals that the president had set. So, as he put it, the practice of changing medical statistics for political reasons became sort of business as usual in Russia just before the pandemic. So this is the slide that I had missed recording. I will you will now see Professor Barabanov giving the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Our constitution. First, his amendments were about some general things, some social programs and so on. But on March 10, the first Russian woman astronaut, Valentina Tereshkova, proposed the new amendment just to nullify the 2 terms limit for the president and to start from zero Putin's limits because we've changed a bit the constitution. So there is a new version of constitution, new powers, new distribution of powers. So it would be fair for the president to start from zero. So everybody understood what was the reason behind this idea to change the constitution. And on March 17, the special legislative act was published on the changes of the constitution, and not an official referendum, but a kind of unofficial plebiscite was arranged for 22 April, which is Vladimir Lenin's birthday. A very symbolic date for Russia, still with many people connected psychologically to the communist ideas, to the nostalgic feelings for the Soviet Union, and so on. So it was a huge political campaign started just at the beginning of the spread of the COVID. Next, the social context. We have 2 national holidays, 23 February, which is the Army Day, and 8 March, which is the Women's Day. And many people from Russia, especially from Moscow, usually go to take some days on leave in their offices and go abroad just for short holidays. And on these days, especially on 8 March, the spread of pandemic in Europe was already very high, but nobody in Russia cared on this. The borders with the European Union weren't closed. There were no official recommendation from the Foreign Ministry or from the Health Ministry not to go, and so on. And the reason was not to provoke negative reactions in society, just in the context of those constitutional amendments before the plebiscite. So after a week from return of the people after 8 March holiday, we had the rapid spread of the virus in Russia, mainly in Moscow. Later, Deputy Prime Minister responsible for health policy confirmed that starting from 16 March, the COVID situation in Moscow is started to deteriorate rapidly. But let's remember the political context. The next day, we have this act for the constitutional amendments, the plebiscite, and so on. And it was a lack of quick reaction. Only 9 days after, on 25 March, Putin decided to postpone the plebiscite. And during these 9 days, we had absolutely uncontrolled spread of the COVID inside Russia. So it was some kind with political background on this. Then the legal context, I will not speak on this on details, just to say that Putin decided not to introduce the formal emergency situation according to our emergency, the federal emergency law, and because not to have some obligations of the state for the citizens, because of emergency, but he just announced a non-working days for several weeks, and they introduced a very new concept to the law, which is named high readiness to a possible emergency. Just post factum, this high readiness was introduced into the federal law on emergencies, and because of that, the lockdown in Moscow and then in other regions was launched. Then we have about 2 months of lockdown in Moscow, and one point was really bad for the society because they introduced the special electronic passes in Moscow with QR codes to use the underground to go for a walk if you had to walk, and so on. And on 15 April, there was a massive police check of these electronic passes. The Moscow underground buses, shops, and so on. And so many people's, literally hundreds of people's, hundreds of persons were stuck in the underground tunnels like this for 30 minutes, for an hour, just to pass this check. And after that, the spread of the virus was faster than it was before. There are some other photos of this. And then there was another point very important for Vladimir Putin, connected with the historical memory and the policy of historical memory, because we had the 75th anniversary of the V-Day of the victory in what we named the Great Patriotic War against Germans during the World War II. And the annual military parade became one of the key elements in formulating the new historical memory identity in contemporary Russia. It was really important for Vladimir Putin, but he had to postpone it because of the pandemic. Nobody of the world leaders could come in Moscow because not only of political contradictions, but of the pandemic. And on 9 May, Putin come individually to put flowers to the war monument near the Kremlin wall. But at the same time, Alexander Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, decided not to postpone his parade in Minsk. And there is a visible mutual jealousy between Putin and Lukashenko in the post-Soviet space. So it was also a kind of a Game of Thrones in this parade context. So some photos from 9 May, Putin near the Kremlin, Putin with flowers. It's also important to say that after March 24, Putin never visited Moscow. People were saying that he was hidden somewhere in a bunker, like we say in Moscow, either near his villa in the Moscow regions about 30 or 40 kilometers from the city, either at the Valdai Lake, which is 200 or 300 kilometers from Moscow, and only on the Victory Day he came for the first time into the capital during the pandemic. And for the contrast, the Lukashenko's parade in Minsk, nothing postponed. And another point, there is domestic political conflicts in Russia because Putin presumably was in that bunker. Prime Minister was ill with COVID for several weeks, and the most influential decision maker became the mayor of Moscow, Sergei Sobyanin, who was issuing all key regulations on the lockdown. All other regions were copying and these regulations, and the experts started to talk that Sobyanin is becoming a real alternative to Putin domestically. And there was another reason for Putin's jealousy. And after that, immediately the victory parade, the postponed victory parade after the Victory Day, Putin decided to stop those non-working days at the federal level. The number of daily cases continued to grow, but it doesn't matter. But Sobyanin, according to his own strategy, decided not to follow Putin's order, and the lockdown in Moscow continued in spite of Putin's decree. This is the Russian photo, the Russian picture. But it's clear. In March, April, you see 1,000, 5,000. Then 100,000, and UK stay home, all dangerous, lockdown, and so on. And now we have 11 May, 220,000, and that's all okay, go to work. That's how the decision making by Putin was done to stop the lockdown on the federal level. And so this is the cartoon, this is Putin in the tank, and this is the mayor of Moscow, Sobyanin, stopping him near the Kremlin wall.
It's like the cartoon of on Tiananmen Square, isn't it? The man in front of the tank with his
yeah,
bag.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is maybe you can see this is a rather popular cartoonist in Russia named Yolkin. He he presents his cartoons for Deutsche Welle, like here for Radio Liberty and so on, and some of them are really funny. And so after this Victory Day, Putin decided to announce the victory parade to be on 24 June. It's another symbolic date connected with Stalin's parade in 1945, immediately after the war. And also he announced that the plebiscite will be on the 1st July. The mayor of Moscow first said that it's not possible to end the lockdown just because of celebrations, but then he was forced by Putin to stop the lockdown in Moscow on 9 June. So there is another cartoon in a bunker. Putin is saying, "Dear citizens, come to vote," and so on. There is one of the posters of the left front, which is one of the radical left organizations in Russia, headed by Sergei Udaltsov. Radika, maybe Boris Kagarlitsky told you about this person. And this is their poster on the criminal plague plebiscite, because we still had many thousands of daily cases. We have many hundreds of thousands of total cases, but Putin decided to organize the plebiscite. By the way, on 26 June, Moscow became the world city #1 according to the total number of cases. We overcome the New York City on this day, so it was a kind of at least one race. Then Russia became better than America. This is unfortunately the COVID race. Then there were many irregularities in these plebiscite organizations. They introduced many mobile polling stations in the cities and provinces, and the opposition said that it was absolutely impossible to control the counting of votes. And there are some photos also how the plebiscite was organized: in a minivan, in a tree stump, in another tree stump in a village, also somewhere in the streets. This is in the children play yard, and so on. And officially there was 77% of yes. The people who voted for the constitutional amendments, including the Putin's amendment for stopping the 2 terms limits, and one relatively popular opposition statistician in Moscow, Sergei Shpilkin, who is studying various irregularities at our elections, said that there were at least 20% of falsified votes because of these irregularities of counting them and so on. So I will pass his methodology. You can read it in my slide. So so that was, let's say, the normal, if it's possible to say normal, political electoral result in Russia. The last presidential elections in 2018, where, according to Shpilkin, there were 10 million extra votes to Putin. And this is the results of the plebiscite with 22 millions of extra votes for yes, for the amendments. Now let's pass to the medical statistics. And just from the beginning, the specifics of our COVID statistics was connected with a very low mortality. And officially, it was represented as an example of effectiveness of our medicine and so on. But there are many suspicions of underreporting and direct falsifications. And there are some methods that Russian experts propose how we can verify the real statistics in Russia. One of them that the regions of Russia used to publish a monthly statistics on a number of deaths in their regions. And so the idea was to find an arithmetic mathematical mean of deaths for each month and each regions of 5 or 10 years, and then to compare the number of deaths in April, May, June, July of 2020 with this mean for corresponding months previously. So, and the result was the big surplus of deaths in many hundreds of thousands starting from April in Moscow and the Dagestan Republic in the Caucasus from beginning of May and in St. Petersburg, and from May, June in other regions. And also, let's remember my first slide on the presumed practice to diminish medical statistics from and to change diagnosis from heart diseases to anything else. So our Ministry of Health issued a new regulations how to count statistically the COVID deaths. And they divided them in two parts. One, the deaths because of the COVID, whereas the COVID is the primary and the only cause of a death. And another part of cases is death with the COVID. So the patient is positive on COVID, but there are some other illnesses, pneumonia, diabetes, heart failure, and so on and so on. And in these cases, you have not to indicate that he died because of the COVID, and his case was not included into the official statistics. And those ministerial regulations were leaked to the media, and so it became public. Now also the Russian statistics. This is the number of deaths totally in Russia in 2019 and 2020, March, April, May, June, July. And you see that starting from May, you have a surplus of 18,000 in May, 25,000 in June, 29,000 in July. Totally is 70,000. Here you have this medical statistics, the deaths because of the COVID. Here the deaths with COVID, but not because of the COVID. So totally, let's see, in July there were 10,000 deaths of various patients because of the COVID or with the COVID and so on. But officially, we have the site, the governmental site, stopcoronavirus.ru. And in July, you see only 4,000 numbers, 4,000 deaths reported to the World Health Organizations and to the public. And if we have the sum of these 4 months, we have these figures. The total surplus of 70,000 deaths before because of the COVID, 22,000 plus 15,000 with the COVID. So according to primary medical certificates, so in total 37,000 cases, but officially for these 4 months, only 14,000 were reported. So you have, it's up to you which figure to choose from 14 to 70,000 in these 4 months. And one interesting observation, the regions which are suspected to show the most visible falsifications in the COVID statistics are the same regions that made the most visible falsifications in electoral statistics. There are usually some regions in the south of Russia, the Krasnodar region where Sochi is situated at the Black Sea, the Rostov province also at the south, some ethnic republics in the south like Chechnya, like Ingushetia, like Dagestan, also some ethnic republics on the Volga like Tatarstan and Bashkortostan, and some regions in Siberia like Kemerovo province and so on. They are the leaders of electoral falsifications for years, and they became the leaders of the medical falsifications as well. Another point of those ministerial regulations was a decision not to count asymptomatic cases in medical statistics. And after that, logically, the number of daily cases started to diminish. But see the dates, the ministerial regulations is 27 May. And immediately after that, Putin arranged the new plebiscite for the 1st July, the new victory parade for the 24th June. So the medical falsifications were connected once again with the political purposes.
I see you're nearly at the end, Oleg, but maybe we should wrap up soon.
Sure. There are some funny cases, some funny graphics, like you see for several days you have 29, 99, 98, 97 cases, never 100. But you can see them in my slides. And also in Moscow, the mayor of Moscow said at the end of July, now we have in a kind of interval between 650 and 700, and virus answered yes. And for the whole month after, there were 692, 693, but never 700. And there are also some disparities between the number of infected and the number of recovered. So in several regions, there were cases which all the patients recovered immediately because of disparities of two statistics and so on. And there is another methods how to find the real statistics is to counting requests on Google and on our Russian similar search machine like the Google, we name it Yandex, connected with requests like I don't feel smells and so on, which is probably connected with the personal illness, the start of the personal illness, and not the general interest to the COVID. And there are some regional, some local results of these statistics of requests. Officially, all was okay. This is Nabережные Челны, the second city in the Tatarstan. Officially, all was quiet, but unofficially, the people say that there was a huge spike of the pandemic, and the statistics of requests showed it. This is the Dagestan as well. This is also which city had the peaks of these requests, and so on. And the final is the vaccine, and another story. We all understand that the geopolitical significance of the vaccine race. Putin decided that Russia should be the first one, so they licensed on 11 August our first vaccine. Then there was the open letter of several scientists to the Lancet, the medical research journal where the results were published, with the idea that, with the thesis, with the argument that the Russian statistics of patients for this vaccine doesn't correspond at all to the probability theory. This is just for your information. You can read it later. We have 3 candidate vaccines in Russia, which is the difference of various vaccines. And finally, this is another funny picture that Putin released 500 lions to make people stay indoors. This is fake, but not that greatly. So thank you very much.